Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over the 2026 Senate elections and doing an interesting scenario. And this is, if the Democrats were able to get a majority in the US Senate in 2026, how would they go about doing it? This is not a prediction saying that I think that will happen, but more of a, if the Democrats were able to do it, how I think it would go down. This Senate map that's up in 2026, Senate elections happen every 6 years. This is the Senate map that was last up in 2020. And this Senate map seems to be one of the more competitive maps, but also one that favors the Republicans more than the Democrats. The Senate map we just had up in 2024 is probably the most Democratic-friendly one. I would argue this one is more of the most Republican-friendly one. But Republicans start out with around 51 Senate seats that are considered to be safe or likely for them at this time. Democrats start out with about 44 that are about safe or likely for them. And then I have 5 Senate seats that I'm leaving as no rating for right now for the purpose of this video. And for the Democrats to get here, I'm going to start going through the races that I think are going to be under 5% margin of victory. And the first one to go over is the state of New Hampshire. I'm going to pull it up here. New Hampshire, this is Democratic incumbent Jeanne Shaheen. She is retiring, but Democrats do have a very strong candidate in Chris Pappas, the U.S. representative from the 1st District. The Republicans do have also a very strong candidate in Scott Brown, the former Massachusetts senator. This race, I think, is going to be a lot closer than a lot of early predictions have made it sound like it's going to be. Now, the early polling hasn't had a Scott Brown versus Chris Pappas matchup yet, but the early predictions have this race as lean Democrat for both Sabato and Cook Politico. And currently I'm projecting this race to be about under 5%, around 4 to 4.5% win for Pappas over Brown. This gets the Democrats up to 45. Now the Democrats have 2 Senate seats up that they are defending in both Michigan and Georgia. The state of Michigan, which this is going to be Democratic incumbent Gary Peters, he is also retiring, so this is another open race. The Democratic primary is currently wide open right now, with 4 Democrats running in this race, and 2 other Democrats potentially jumping in. So that still has to play itself out. The Republicans, the nominee from 2024, Mike Rogers, is running again, as well as Bill Huizenga, U.S. representative, reportedly entering this race soon. So this Republican primary could get competitive as well, though Mike Rogers does have the early lead. This Senate race, at this point in time, is seen as a toss-up by pretty much every single political prediction website. However, I do have my own reservations about this race. I think it's certainly possible the Republicans could win, but Republicans in Michigan have not fared too well when Donald Trump has not been at the top of the ticket. When Republicans have been running with Trump, Republicans have done very well. When Trump has not been at the top of the ticket, for instance in 2018 and 2022, it has not gone as well for them. And for the sake of today's video, let's just say Michigan ends up going Democratic. This puts the Democrats at 46. Now we have the state of Georgia. This is Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff. He was elected in 2020 in a very close election against Republican David Perdue, and Republicans were hoping to get Republican Governor Brian Kemp to run for this race in 2026. Kemp declined and will not be running. Now the Republicans are scrambling to find a strong Republican candidate to face off against Ossoff. But now that Kemp is not running, the Republicans do not have as strong of a chance to win this race, as to take down an incumbent senator in a swing state, you likely need a very strong Republican candidate, and right now it's really anyone's guess if the Republicans will be able to get to that level of strong candidate. The early polling has shown so far, despite the toss-up ranking, that Jon Ossoff has a pretty decent floor of support around the low 40 or the mid 45% range to the high 49 to 50% range against the 2 Republican candidates in this race. Even I expect things will narrow up. I think at this point in time, Jon Ossoff is likely to hold on to Georgia by a lean Democratic margin as well. This gets Democrats up to 47 seats. At this point, this would be the Democrats holding everything they currently hold in the U.S. Senate. Now Democrats would have to flip some Senate seats to take back the Senate. For the good news for them, there are 2 Senate seats up that could potentially be competitive, starting with the state of North Carolina. The reason I think this one is going to be competitive and could be really competitive is due to the fact that former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper is reportedly expressing interest in running, and early recent reports show that he'll be entering this race in the coming days, if he has not entered already. That's very good news for the Democrats. Cooper left office with very high approval numbers in the state of North Carolina, and Republican incumbent Senator Thom Tillis, who is retiring, does not have a very high approval numbers in his own party, so he is not running, but there's already a little bit of Republican discontent with the incumbent. Now, what the Republicans end up doing makes a very big difference in this race. Right now, both Laura Trump and Michelle Morrow have announced or publicly expressed interest in this race. There are a bunch of other Republicans who could run as well. If Laura Trump is the candidate, President Trump obviously is going to play a very big role in this race. There's going to be a lot of Republican money thrown behind Laura Trump to win this race if she does decide to run. But I expect it'll be very close. North Carolina has more of a lean Republican history in the presidential and Senate races than being a Democratic one, but Roy Cooper is a uniquely strong Democratic candidate that gives Democrats a real chance to win. The only hypothetical poll involving Cooper and Trump was back in November, which showed Cooper leading by about 2% with 10% undecided. I think this race is going to be very close. In my own personal rankings, I do have the Republicans as very narrow favorites in this race, again, due to the fact that North Carolina, every time the Democrats think they're going to win a president or Senate race there, the Republicans seem to push back and say, no, this is a Republican state, not a toss-up state. But I think it's going to be very close. But let's just say, for the sake of this video, Roy Cooper is able to win a very close election and flip this state blue. This gets the Democrats to 48. Now the Democrats are looking to take out Maine, which is Republican Senator Susan Collins. Susan Collins is much more of a moderate Republican that breaks with President Trump and other Senate Republicans frequently, so that has given her a little bit of love from a lot of independents and some even Democrats in the state of Maine. She has publicly expressed interest in running, though it is worth noting she is not officially confirmed that she is running again. The Democrats thus far do not have any strong candidates that are running in this race. There is potential candidate that the governor of Maine, Janet Mills, may run. David Costello and Jordan Wood are both in this race, but they're not really well-known names statewide. So the Democrats have a candidate problem in Maine where they have not been able to get a strong, well-known candidate to run. That could change with Janet Mills, but even then, we'll have to wait and see. Right now, this race is listed as lean Republican for Cook Politico and Sablo Crystal Ball. The easiest scenario here, there is a scenario where Susan Collins versus Janet Mills happens and Mills is barely able to win. The easiest scenario is that Susan Collins decides to not run for re-election, and then the Democrats pick up essentially an easy seat. Whoever the Democratic nominee is will likely end up winning. If Susan Collins runs, it's more likely she holds on to this race. Maybe, let's say, Democrats win in a very narrow election as well. This gets the Democrats up to 49. So, and what you think of all the battleground states for the Senate races in 2026, Democrats could conceivably get up to 49 on election night, and I wouldn't really be too shocked because all these races that are up are either really competitive states, all battleground states, except for Maine in 2024, but Maine has Republican Susan Collins, who is uniquely popular. But again, it was a Democratic state for Kamala Harris, so it really wouldn't shock me. For the Democrats to get 50% or get 50 senators or go above 50, they're going to need to win 2 Senate seats in states that Donald Trump won. And there's 3 immediate targets and 1 potential sleeper target. The first one to watch for me, is the state of Texas. Texas, this is going to be Republican Senator John Cornyn, who is facing a primary challenger from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. The early polling data shows Paxton beating Cornyn in the Republican primary and by a pretty large margin, but that also shows Paxton in a general election much more competitive against the Democrat Colin Allred. Texas back in 2018 also had a Senate race with Ted Cruz where he only won by about 2.5%. So Texas has shown it can have competitive elections in Democratic midterm years. Now, what I'm saying here is for the Democrats to get 50 Senate seats, they're probably going to have to win either Texas or one of these other states. But Texas with Ken Paxton may give the Democrats the best chance. So again, I don't think this is going to happen, but let's just say Texas finally goes blue. That gets the Democrats 50-50 with the Republicans. At this point, the Republicans are having an awful night. They're in free fall, and this really could not get any worse. The other Democratic target that I think is more conceivable at this time is the state of Iowa. Iowa, which has a Senate seat up, this is Republican incumbent Joni Ernst. She's gone viral lately for making a comment about Medicare and Medicaid, saying that we're all going to die comment. A lot of people online have been thrashing her for that statement, and that really could hurt her in this election, so much so that the Democrats, who are currently running Nathan Sage, J.D. Scholden, and Zach Walz, have already jumped at this opportunity, and this could potentially become a very close race. Early polling from the Democratic Public Policy Polling firm showed Ernst versus generic Democrat at about a 2-point race. I think at worst, this would probably be a lean Republican win for Joni Ernst, but what if voters in Iowa are so upset or the country is doing so poorly? Come 2026, it's a massive Democratic wave that they end up voting against Ernst, voting her out, and Democrats win. This is, I think, probably the most realistic way the Democrats get to 51 Senate seats and taking the majority away from the Republicans. It's a very tall task because to do this, you're winning about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Senate seats in states that Donald Trump just last year won in the presidential race. And in the case of Iowa and Texas, won handily. So the Democrats really have a tough position and uphill battle here in 2026 at trying to do this. One wild card could be the state of Nebraska, where independent Dan Osborne could run for Senate against Republican Dan Ricketts. It's possible, or Pete Ricketts. It's possible that that could happen, but again, in that race, he ended up losing by about 7 points, which was very competitive. I'm not sure against a stronger Republican incumbent he'll have the same luck and fortune in that one. Ohio is always a question because this is Republican John Husted, who just became senator in January after filling the rest of J.D. Vance's term, being appointed here. It's all dependent on if Sherrod Brown, the former U.S. senator, decides to run. We just saw a very close Senate race where Brown versus Moreno ended up being under 5 points. Husted versus Brown in the latest poll from back in April showed about a 3-point race between Husted versus Brown. So you could argue that Ohio maybe be a more likely pickup opportunity for the Democrats than Texas or Iowa. But all indications, so far, is Sherrod Brown does not have interest in running for the Senate race in 2026. He would rather run for governor. If he were to enter this race, this gives the Democrats a much better pickup opportunity than Iowa and maybe a better pickup opportunity than Texas. But again, this is certainly at this point in time a pretty far-fetched scenario. In my own recent prediction, I had both Texas and Ohio easily going as likely Republican, over 5 points, under 15. Texas, I had more so being close at likely Republican, but you could even argue lean Republican. And then you get into the battleground Senate seats, where Georgia, Michigan, and New Hampshire being lean Democratic, I'm not going to argue right now. I think that's where they start off. In North Carolina and Maine being tilt Democrat. Maine, I very much disagree with. I think that's lean Republican right now. North Carolina, I think North Carolina right now, truthfully, is the closest Senate race in the country if Roy Cooper decides to run. I think that's 50-50 from now until Election Day, and I don't fault you for saying it's Republican or Democrat. I think it's going to be very, very close. I am more on the side of that I think Laura Trump would narrowly defeat Roy Cooper, but man, do I think that would be close. But that one being blue, I would not bat an eye at all. But the Democrats don't really have a great way of getting to 50 Senate seats or more, but it's certainly a path if everything goes terrible from now till November of 2026. And that's a very big if for the Democrats. For the Democrats to do that again, they have to take out another Republican incumbent in Susan Collins, Ken Paxton in Texas, Joni Ernst in Iowa. 3 Republicans who Collins is the strongest of the 3, but Ernst and Paxton have had their troubles recently in recent weeks in their respective states. It's not impossible, but I would give the Democrats like a 1 to 2% chance of this possibly happening. But I want to hear what you think. Leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to also leave any other video topics you'd like to see me cover. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video.